Welcome back to the Vegas Nose podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeScoop.com. I am Marc Givler, and joined as always by Bill Greene. Another week. This one's an interesting one though, because it's Thanksgiving week, so there's some Thursday stuff, there's some Friday stuff. So we're recording this a little bit early. We'll make sure this is up by the time the Thanksgiving Day games kick off, just in case there's anything there of value for anybody. So we'll get this up a little earlier than usual in the week. Bill, before we get into this, how are you feeling about this week? It's always an interesting week with Thursday and Friday games. You get some rivalry stuff sometimes. I mean, when you were looking at things this week, extra comfort, extra stress, how did you view this week's slate?
Yeah, college is, I felt pretty good. And I usually do, all the time. NFL, I've been lost for 30 years and I'm not coming out of that wilderness anytime soon. So, not to look at, I think, more with the college stuff. I don't know if you want to start with the NFL first, and then we can get into our college picks and kind of look at some, potential playoff lines in college too. I think it'd be kind of interesting. So maybe if we switch to the NFL first, maybe I'll do better because I couldn't do any worse.
So. Yeah, that's a good idea. We have an interesting. We're gonna add a little wrinkle to this here at the end, so you guys have to stay put for that with some college stuff that we're gonna dive into. We're gonna do our picks as usual, but then we've got another little segment here at the end. But we will do NFL first. I'll start us off. I do have a Thanksgiving Day pick. I'm gonna go with Houston -3 at Detroit. Deshaun Watson is playing tremendous football right now. Even with, they trade DeAndre Hopkins, he doesn't have a ton around him right now. He's really playing at a high level. Detroit, I think, is kind of struggling right now. They've got some issues. I know it's Thanksgiving, so you always kind of give the Lions a little extra love on Thanksgiving, but I just -3. I think Houston's going to win the game. I think they're going to win, 7 to 10 points, somewhere in that vicinity. Deshaun Watson, just a little too much there. Bill, what do you like this week in the NFL?
Yeah, I'm going with a Thanksgiving Day game too. The next game after that, I'm going to take the football team. I think the Redskins are playing really well. And Alex Smith has kind of rejuvenated him a little bit. I know Dallas is playing a little better too, but I think Washington's going to win that division. Best team, and they got the best D line. The DBs are good, and I think Washington is going to beat Dallas. But I'll take the 3 points with the Skins.
Yep, I looked at that one. I hate both teams. I couldn't fathom losing any money on either of those two teams anymore. So Dallas has hurt me enough this year. I took a complete pass on that one. Man, these Sunday games are interesting. The one that kind of jumps out to me immediately is the Dolphins -6.5 at the Jets. I don't know that. I don't know if the Jets are even trying at this point. It's so bad. The Dolphins did not play well this past week. I think Flores will have them ready to go. Some quarterback. I don't know, controversy. I don't know if you want to call it controversy, but they do have some quarterback issues right now, just kind of who's playing. It looks like Tua is going to go back in, but the Jets are just so bad right now. And I know weather could be a thing. It's probably going to be a very high scoring game, but I look at that and I just don't see how the Dolphins don't win that game by at least a touchdown. So I'm taking the Dolphins -6.5 at the Jets. Bill, what else do you have?
Yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee playing Indy. Tennessee getting love their effort every week. It seems like every game is overtime or close to going to overtime. And, they can get down. They definitely can come back. I love what Vrabel's doing there. I don't believe in Indianapolis, although they win all the time and they're looked at as one of the top teams. They're any good. So I'm taking Tennessee this week +3.
Yeah, I looked at that. I almost did that as well. I didn't pull the trigger just because I keep betting against the Colts. And, I think I did. I haven't lost every time I've done it, but I've underestimated the Colts all year. So I kind of just stayed away from that. I did go and this may be a mistake coming off the dud Tampa just had, but I like Kansas City -3.5 at Tampa this week. I just think Kansas City's I know the Steelers are undefeated. I think Kansas City's the best team in the NFL. And I think they are going to give I think a bit of a matchup problem for Tampa. They're going to be able to score. Obviously, they're able to score on just about anybody. Tampa's run defense is phenomenal, but Andy Reid's never going to run the football, so that kind of takes that out of play a little bit. And I think Kansas City, their defense is a little up and down, but I think they have the right personnel with Tampa's offense. You know where Tom Brady's going to be. He's going to be a couple yards behind the center on every play. He's not going anywhere. And Kansas City does have some talented pass rushers. I think they can frustrate Brady enough to win the game and cover the 3.5. Anything else you got, Bill?
I'm going to agree with you on that one, which probably is a kiss of death for you there. Yeah, Kansas City's they're the better football team. I'm not sold on Tampa Bay at all. And everything you said, I agree with. I think it's a shootout. Kansas City has more weapons. They got the better quarterback, probably a better coach, and just their better team. So I'm rolling with Kansas City there.
Now, is that your last pick, or do you have anything else? I got one more.
Yeah, it is. No, that's enough for me.
Okay, that's enough. You've had enough right there. Okay. Here is my I don't want to say it's a lot. Nothing's a lock. I should never use that. I'm not nearly good enough at this to even use that word. But here we go again. How on earth is Seattle only 4.5 favorite against Philly? I have no idea. Seattle, first of all, even when Philly is good, they don't beat Russell Wilson. He owns them. Every time they play, Russell Wilson beats them. And now Russell Wilson's probably getting the worst version of the Eagles he's ever faced. And yeah, it's in Philly with like 10 fans in the stadium, and half of them are probably hating this team right now anyway, so they're not helping the team. I don't see how Seattle doesn't win this game by 10, 14 points. Personally, I would be shocked if this was close. But maybe I'm falling for a trap line here, but Seattle minus 4.5 at Philly is about as good of a bet as I can make, I think. So we will see what happens. I probably put my foot in my mouth, and the Eagles will somehow still be in first place on Monday night after that game. But I don't see how that game's close. And Seattle has struggled a little bit lately, and I think they've struggled to the point now that they're in a real battle in that division, and they need this win. And the Eagles have just looked pathetic. They got some guys back, but it hasn't mattered. So that to me screams 2 touchdown win. I just don't know how that game's close, but I guess we'll see what happens. And like I said, maybe I'm falling for a trap line. Let's move to college. Bill, you can get us started here. It sounds like you have more games you like this week than I do. You mentioned you might have upwards of like half a dozen games here. I only have a few.
Right.
What jumps out to you right away here in college?
Yeah, Friday, I'm going to take Texas. They're either pick or getting 1 point from Iowa State. I mean, I'm a big Iowa State guy. I love Matt Campbell, but when Iowa State runs tunnel, they don't have one guy on their team that Texas would have offered or would have wanted. And then when Texas runs out of the tunnel, Iowa State would take any one of those 85 guys. They would take the third string safety. So the talent gap is too huge. Matt Campbell's a lot better coach than Tom Herman, but man, this is about Jimmy's and Joe's, man, not X's and O's. I think Texas just has more dudes, and Texas is not awful, and they can still play for the Big 12 title. And I'm going to take her, and I think they'll win this one at home.
I'm actually taking Texas as well as a pick 'em. Like I've said all year with Texas, and I've actually done pretty well with Texas games this year. Haven't won every one, but I've had some good reads on this team. They're playing better. We can go on and on about the Tom Herman situation. Is he a dead man walking? Is he, how hot is that seat? But just when you think, again, this is a team that just when you think they're dead, they never are. And this is a type of game they'll win. And then everyone will get back on the bandwagon, and then they'll drop one later on, and you'll be like, oh my God, how did that happen? So I think Texas wins this game, which will also create all sorts of chaos in the Big 12, which I suspect is probably fair given how, balanced that conference is. Whether it's a great conference or not, I don't know about that, but it's definitely balanced. It's a very even league this year. So I think it would make sense for it to kind of come down to like some crazy tiebreakers and things like that. So, yeah, I think Texas has more talent. What the home field means this year, gosh, I don't know. But if I can get Texas as a pick 'em at home against a team that they have more talent than, I think that's the safer play. What else you got?
Yeah, same day, later in the day. I'm going to take North Carolina plus the 5 against Notre Dame and think that they can get the shootout. If it's a game where Notre Dame has got a lot of 5 and 6 minute drives where they control the clock, control the ball, North Carolina is in trouble. They need to have a game that gets into the 30s and 40s, and just Ian Book can't keep up. So, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think weather should be fine, and I think it should be a shootout. And I think North Carolina can beat them. And if not, even if they get down, they've shown the ability to come back from deficits. So maybe you get a score in the end out of Sam Howell that doesn't win the game, but it beats the point spread. So I'm going to take North Carolina plus the 5.
Man, I was so close to doing the same, but just didn't not going to do it. Just going to let it go. But I'm with you. That was one I was very close to doing something with, and I would absolutely take the points in that game if I had to make a pick. I've got a Friday night game. I've got Oregon minus 13.5 at Oregon State. Total talent mismatch. I think very highly of Mario Cristobal. I think they haven't looked super sharp yet, but I think Oregon State is just way outmatched here. I don't, yes, rivalry game, but no huge home field advantage this year. So I think look, it's as simple as me just think. I think Oregon's probably 3 to 4 scores better than Oregon State, and I think they'll continue to get better as the year goes on with some of the young players they have. So I kind of like them. That one should be pretty high scoring, but give me Oregon minus 13.5. What else you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take Clemson over the total 54.5. I was taking Clemson last week over the total. Their game got canceled with Florida State. I think it's very similar matchup, but the total's a lot lower. Pitt's better on offense this year than they have been. 54.5. I don't think I'm going to need too much out of 2 touchdowns will probably do it for me there. So Clemson over 54.5. Wouldn't be shocked if Clemson got pretty close to that total all by themselves.
Why don't you fire off another one to us, because you got way more than me this week.
Okay. Hold your nose on this one. I can't really explain it.
Oh no, I'm waiting for this to be one of mine too. Go ahead.
I'm going to take Michigan State plus 13. Northwestern comes off that huge win last week. This is probably going to be a game where the first 1 to 20 wins. And, if I can get 1 touchdown on Michigan State, I might win this bet. So I'm rolling with the Spartans here at home. I know that matters. They're terrible, but I just got a feeling this is going to be a really low scoring, close game. So we'll see.
Oh, you're in the right zip code, just not quite. I got another weird one myself that it's just a total feel shot in the dark. It's not based on the type of evidence I would normally like to base a pick off of, but I've got Maryland plus 11.5 at Indiana. I think Indiana, that was their Super Bowl last week.
Oh,
I think it's going to be very difficult to get back up for. Maryland, strangely enough, still has something to play for here. So I think their offense is pretty good. I expect high scoring, something in the neighborhood. Let's say Indiana 38-31, and that would obviously cover it for Maryland. I do expect Indiana to pull it out, but that's a lot of points for me. Again, as good as Indiana has looked this year, player for player, the talent gap between Indiana and Maryland is not overly significant. It really isn't. I think the coaching gap could be, but the actual player to player talent gap between the two rosters, I don't think is that great. And again, I just think coming off that emotional game against Ohio State, I think they really, emptied the tank for that one. So I'm in a similar logic, similar boat to you of like, do you really want to have money on Michigan State or Maryland? Probably not, but just a gut feel on that. And that's actually my last pick. So whatever you've got left, let us know.
Okay. Yeah, or I am going to take Auburn plus 24.5 and think that maybe Nick Saban not being there kind of upsets the rhythm of Bama a little bit. No Jalen Waddle. I just think with Nick not, I think it's Steve Sarkisian just plays it really close to the vest. I think his mindset will be don't screw it up. So I think they're going to get the lead, run the ball. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. Auburn's got play. They're not, I don't think the world of Gus Malzahn, but they've got guys. So can they stay within 24.5? I think they can. I think it'll be a decent game to watch too. So I think Alabama's rhythm's upset a little bit. I think it'll be very conservative. I think Gus will play for broke. And I think we get a good game there. So I'm taking Auburn as my fifth choice. And then my sixth one is, and like you had said earlier about your Seattle pick, there's no such thing as a lot, anything like that. But my highest game played this year is next, and it's going to be Ohio State minus 28 against Illinois. I think Illinois cannot throw the football, and they have a really, really good running attack against Rutgers and against Nebraska, but they're not going to be able to run the ball against Ohio State. And I think we see a similar deal from last week where we have a 31-7 score at the end, and it does not end up 42-35. I think 31-7 ends up 52-10 in the end. So I'm going to lay the 28 with Ohio State, and I think we're going to get 60 minutes of football. I think Ryan Day puts the hammer down. I think he puts the hammer down in practice all week. They get out of town. They go on the road. And I'm looking for Ohio State just for a complete 60-minute total butt whipping here. And I'm going to lay 28 points and covered by halftime. And then you got to hope Ohio State doesn't die in the second half. And I don't think they're going to this week. So we'll see. But that'll be my highest played game of this year so far.
Yeah, just with respect to the Iron Bowl, that was another one I almost play. I do like the Auburn and the points there. Just even taking out the Saban factor, if you look over the years, I mean, the team that has actually given Alabama some trouble is Auburn. I mean, it's actually been the one. If there's a team that kind of screws it up for Alabama here and there, it's been Auburn. So that's a lot of points. I don't particularly love this Auburn team, but again, it's a lot of points. And Alabama's defense, just okay. Not certainly not one of Saban's best defenses by any stretch. And so I think you're probably on the right path there. I just don't know what to expect out of the Ohio State Illinois game. I follow the logic on that. I just, how much Marcus Hooker are we going to see at safety? And, we'll see. We're going to do something a little different here. Just kind of wrap this up. So, they took the college football playoff committee obviously released their first rankings this week. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State were the four teams in I believe it was Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4. So, but those were the four teams. Right. And so what we're seeing online here is they've put out lines for all those potential matchups between those four teams. It's kind of like a round robin type of thing where you can get, for example, you get Alabama versus Clemson, Ohio State versus Notre Dame, what the line would be, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to just rapid fire here. We're going to go down the line on all the lines they have here. Let me count them here. 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like they have six lines here. We're just going to go quickly down the line, tell you what the line is, and then tell you, if it gun to our head, what we would pick today. And if we get a chance to revisit this in a couple weeks, I think we'll probably do that when maybe some teams have changed, certainly maybe some lines have changed. But just wanted to kind of do that. I think it'd be a kind of a neat exercise, just kind of look at the early futures lines on, the playoff teams or whatever. So the first one here is Alabama -4 against Ohio State. Bill, what gun to your head here? What would you pick?
Yeah, I think shootout, and I don't know that either defense is going to stop the other offense, but I do think Ohio State matches up well there. And I did not think Ohio State would have met well last year. I'll take my chances playing Mac Jones and Devontae Smith. I would never have wanted to play healthy Tua, Ruggs, Judy, Waddle, Smith. No way do I want to play that team last. But I think this year, I think Bama, they're really good. Obviously, they're favored for a reason. I'll take 4 points in Ohio State against Bama. I'll definitely take that. I think it'd be just a barn burner shootout. Whoever got the ball last is going to win. Whoever turnover to is going to win. So I'll take the points there with Ohio State.
It's one of those lines. It's in no man's land. I mean, like I said, I've had people tell me over the years, like those lines that like they're like 4. It's like Vegas basically saying we don't really have a great feel for this. I agree. It would be a shootout. So with that in mind, I think both teams have trouble stopping each other. With that in mind, give me the 4. I'll take the 4 points. I'll take Ohio State plus 4. If it was Alabama plus 4, I would obviously take Alabama as well. So it's one of those things where I'm just taking points in a game that I think is a pretty evenly matched shootout. The next line here, they have Alabama and Clemson. Alabama minus 6.5 against Clemson. Bill, your thoughts on that?
You know, my first thought is automatically to think, how could you not take 6.5 with Clemson? But Clemson really embarrassed Alabama the last time they played, and Nick is in the memory bank, and I think he wants a crack at Clemson really, really bad. I'll still take the 6.5 points, but man, I could see Alabama laying the wood to this Clemson team. I'm not a big believer in this team. I love the coaching. I love the in-game adjustments they make. I love their championship pedigree. Those kids they're really good in close games and big games, but man, I just got a feeling that Nick, he might put one on here if these two match up. But, I would take 6.5 in Clemson and, take a shot with that.
Yeah. As we sat here looking at this or talking about this, my initial instinct was to take the 6.5. But as I've sat here and kind of let that process, I'm actually going to take Alabama minus 6.5.
I get it.
For me, it's a matchup thing. I think Clemson's defense maybe next year is going to be unbelievable. I don't think it's an unbelievable defense this year. I think you can get them this year on that defensive side. We know Alabama's offense is going to score on anybody. So with that in mind, I just don't think look, I think the world of Trevor Lawrence. I'm not so sure this group of receivers Clemson has is totally scary. Not like it has been. They have good players. I don't see, a T. Higgins out there, a Sammy Watkins, a DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know. I think Alabama would win that game. I think it'd be a great game, probably be high scoring. But I think Alabama would probably win that game by a touchdown to somewhere in the 7 to 14 point range. Maybe they get a late one to pull away, win by 10 or 14. But I would be inclined from a matchup perspective. I like Alabama in that matchup. Next one. This one's interesting. Alabama, Notre Dame. Alabama is minus 10 against Notre Dame. Bill.
I'll lay the 10 points. I'll take Nick and the boys there. To me, this Notre Dame team is the perfect example of what we've seen in the past from Northern Lamb. They're Ohio State against Clemson. It's Michigan State against Emma. It's Notre Dame against Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama. We've seen this movie before. We know the ending. They can't score enough to keep up. They're not good enough defensively to hold Bama down. It starts to get out of hand and take chances and make it worse out of hand. So, yeah, I'll lay the 10 with Alabama here, and I think we end up with a 42-17 game. I'm not buying Notre Dame at all, and I think Alabama's a hole for them.
Yeah, I think that's a bad matchup for Notre Dame. I would also take Alabama -10. Um, and this is coming from someone, I'm not a Notre Dame hater. I just wrote this past week, and I wrote a 10 observations column, and Brian Kelly's my national coach of the year if the season ended today. I don't generally believe that this is one of the more talented Notre Dame offenses, or really even defenses for that matter. I think they play great. I think they play pretty good defense, but I think that's a lot of that's coaching. I don't see a ton of difference makers. You need difference makers to beat Alabama. You just do. I mean, you cannot point really to me any big game that Alabama's played the last decade where the other team didn't have just some absolute studs. Even if they don't have as many of them as Alabama has, you have to have a couple. I don't see that out of this year's Notre Dame team. I think this has been Brian Kelly's best coaching job to date.
Yep.
And I don't know where the points are coming from Notre Dame, because I think, again, I said the same thing when Alabama plays Georgia. Yes, Georgia plays really good defense, but Alabama's going to get their 30-35. They just are. You're not going to hold, you hold them to about 30-31 points. That's a win. So that means you got to get to 35. I don't see Notre Dame, even on an Alabama defense. It's not one of Saban's better defenses. I just don't know that Notre Dame gets to 35-40. And I think, again, I look at that, I would see something along the lines of 42-21, maybe 42-27 or something. Maybe Notre Dame can muster up, 4 touchdowns, but I don't think that's going to be enough to cover 10. I mean, I just don't think Alabama's going to score 40 on most teams. So, just kind of is what it is. Now, but the one everyone's been waiting for, Ohio State Clemson. And this is fantastic. It's a pick'em. It's Ohio State Clemson is a pick'em with the lines we're looking at right now. Bill, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think the line is right on the money. I think it's a great line. I really hope we see this matchup. I think it was such a great game last. Teams are different this year, obviously, but I want to see this matchup. I think Ohio State's got to be kicking themselves a little bit from that game last year. They had to have walked off that field. They had the better team. I think they were really slow to adjust to Brent Venables when he totally flipped his defense. I mean, he took a D lineman out. He put Isaiah Simmons as a deep safety in the middle of the field. He brought his safeties up. He put a linebacker in. It was such a radical concept, and Ohio State really never figured out how to block it until the last drive. And I think they'd like another crack at that Venables defense. And I think Ryan Day wants that. And I think I think Ohio State has a few more dudes than Clemson does. Love the Clemson coaching staff again, but I'll take Ohio State here. I picked Ohio State to win it all this year, and I have no reason to get off that right now. So I definitely would pick Ohio State. Clemson, a little bit of revenge factor for the team, and I think for Ryan Day too, to kind of out scheme Brent Venables.
Yeah, this is tough for me. Gosh. I will take Ohio State for now. If we do this in 2 or 3 weeks, I may have a different opinion. Right now, 2 things. One, the motivation factor you mentioned, I think that's huge here. And 2, this kind of ties into what I mentioned about the Clemson-Alabama game a couple minutes ago. I'm just not sure they have that strike fear into the heart of defense, in the heart of defense's type of receiving core this year. Ohio State is stopping the run right now. Whether or not they'd be able to do that against, we saw Trevor Lawrence get loose on them a few times last year. Maybe that would happen again, but Ohio State's very stout up front. Does Clemson have the receivers like they did last year to take advantage of the Ohio State secondary that's not playing well right now? And conversely, I'm giving Ohio State a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here that they've only played a few games so far, and that the Ohio State secondary we see in January will be improved, that they'll figure some things out, either scheme or personnel wise, and we'll be looking at a better Ohio State secondary in January. Now, if this continues to not look good in the secondary over the next 2 weeks, and we do this again in a couple of weeks, and this matchup comes up again, I'm not going to feel the same way if there hasn't been some improvements made. But yeah, between the motivation factor and just looking at the matchups a little bit, and again looking at Clemson's defense and saying, I think you can get their defense a little bit this year. Boston College certainly did. Notre Dame certainly did. I think there's a little more margin for error to playing Clemson this year than there has been in years past. So I will kind of begrudgingly take Ohio State here. I think that one's pretty fluid for me. The last Ohio State one, I believe, yes, is Ohio State Notre Dame. So again, this is kind of weird. As we just watched Notre Dame beat Clemson. I know Trevor Lawrence didn't play, but you got Ohio State Clemson's a pick 'em, and here you get Ohio State Notre Dame. Ohio State -6 against Notre Dame. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Same as playing Alabama. I've got Notre Dame as a Northern Lamb. I've got Ohio State as kind of a Northern elite, very similar to an SEC type team. So I think Ohio State pounds them. I do not believe in Notre Dame. I don't think up with any of the other three teams. To me, Florida is the fourth team, not Notre Dame. And I think Clemson is this will be your next one, I'm sure. And I think Clemson's going to annihilate them the next time they play. And I think it's going to knock Notre Dame out of playoff contention. We'll see. If Notre Dame can beat them again, more power to them. I don't think Notre Dame matches up with Ohio State at all. I mean, and the thought of those guys trying to cover Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave is just, it's not going to happen. And I don't think Notre Dame presents a lot of problems for Ohio State, with Ian Book throwing the ball. They don't have a lot of speed on those receivers. They're big, but they're not real fast. And I think Ohio State would win comfortably over Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get you. You mentioned it. Does Notre Dame? So Ohio State's going to get their points. We know that even against a good defense that Notre Dame has, teams like Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, they're going to get their points. So you got to score with them. And again, despite Ohio State's struggles, does Notre Dame have the personnel to really take advantage of that? And I don't think they do. I just don't think. I think they're better talent in terms of the skill guys are still pretty young. I don't know that there's a stud there that's going to just kill Ohio State. And again, I'm giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here to get their secondary figured out. But I tend to think, Ohio State by 7 to 10. I know winning by touchdowns barely a cover, but it's a cover. So you either cover or you don't. So, I think the line's probably about right. But I would give Ohio State a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, just kind of what we've seen between the two teams over the years when Notre Dame gets into these situations. The last one they have here is kind of fascinating, is Clemson Notre Dame. Again, we just watched Notre Dame beat Clemson, but without Trevor Lawrence, although I'm not so sure that not having Trevor Lawrence was Clemson's biggest problem in that game. But Notre Dame just beat Clemson, but here we go. Clemson, Notre Dame, neutral field in January, Clemson -5. I think Bill kind of gave his answer away just a minute ago, but let's ask him anyway.
Yeah. No, neutral field at Clemson, go back to Notre Dame, wherever you want to play it. I think that butt's getting kicked next time. And I just think it's a bad matchup with a focus, ticked off, healthy, full strength Clemson against Notre Dame. They are going to put 45 on the board this time in regulation, and I don't think Notre Dame is going to get out of the 20s. I think it's a butt kicking supreme. I think Notre Dame will never do again what they do. And if they can do it again, God bless them. I mean, they're betting that I'll eat my crow. And, I don't see Notre Dame lining up with these guys again. Not focused, full strength, ready to go. No chance.
I don't know if I'm cheating here by kind of talking it out this way. So if I'm cheating, everyone can call me on it. But I am going to go into this game under the notion that obviously if this game happens, that they would have already played again a second time. And right. I'm going to go under the notion that Clemson got revenge. and won
by
another game
a field goal,
and probably won.
probably
Probably,
close.
yeah, it probably didn't do it in blowout fashion, or else maybe Notre Dame would be out. So I'm going to go under the notion that the only way this matchup happens is if they play again and Clemson wins a close one. Well, now they've played 2 very close games. So I'm going to take the points here and say they're going to play a third very close game. I'm going to take +5. So if that's cheating, if I'm not, if I'm breaking the spirit of this discussion, people can comment on the video or post on our message board and tell me I'm an idiot. But I'm going to take the +5 there. I'm going to take the points because to me, if they've already played 2 close ones, why wouldn't a third one be close? So that's going to be my theory on that. So that's all they have on here. There's nothing else in terms of like other teams in the mix or anything like that. They just they simply took the 4 current playoff participants and kind of did a round robin deal. And I gave us all the lines. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought it was just interesting to see the early lines. Some of them were very eye-opening to me. Some of them weren't. Some of them were about right to me. Alabama, Ohio State's about right. Some of these, the Ohio State Notre Dame game I thought was about right. But then, seeing Notre Dame +5 against Clemson was a little interesting. And I actually thought the Ohio State Clemson game being a pick'em was just interesting. I didn't really have any strong thoughts either way on it. I just, given the history there, and that's the one I think everyone wants to see happen right now, at least in a semifinal. Seeing that as just a straight pick 'em I thought was cool. But yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll keep an eye on this, and if things change, whether the lines move or the teams get swapped out or something like that, and they do this again here in a couple weeks, we might go back and kind of do this again. But I just thought this would be something kind of cool to add to what we do every week with the NFL and college picks. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. And then we'll see you guys next week. Have a great Thanksgiving.